Helen here in Fort Lauderdale, being joined by the one and only, a man who needs no introduction, Mr. Paulie Malignaggi. Now, always great to catch up with you. I know you'll probably be in Vegas in about a week where a huge super middleweight fight goes down, Caleb Plant versus Canelo. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm excited for it. I'll be there working with Blue Moon Boxing, just being part of the press week events. And I think it's one of the better fights you can make this year. Good style matchup. Canelo has really been dominant of late, but he's showing a little bit of, susceptibility to really slick fighters if they can be consistent. Erislan De Lara gave him problems, but Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo had much less problems. So is he getting better? Was it a case of Canelo getting better? Was it a case of Saunders not showing up as much? I guess the Caleb Plant fight will give us that answer, and we can all look forward to hopefully a great fight. I think both guys are bringing really, really their best to the table.
Well, I think a lot of fans are anticipating this fight as well, especially even after their press conference and that face-off. Did you see, that little altercation between them and then the shove, the slap?
Yeah, I saw that. There was some words exchanged. I think maybe some misunderstanding on Canelo's part, and then, a little bit of a physical altercation. But I look forward to watching them get physical on November 6th.
Well, for that day, do you think it was just a misunderstanding, or?
I think the tensions flare and the misunderstandings are easier to happen when tensions are flaring. You're already going to fight each other, so tensions are flaring, right? So Caleb called him a motherfucker, and Canelo thought that he was basically saying fuck his mom. So, motherfucker doesn't mean fuck your mom, but, for somebody whose English is not the first language, it could be that. Now, I have no reason not to believe Canelo if that's what he thought. My only discrepancy there is he called Boo Boo a motherfucker a couple months ago, a few months back in the post-fight press conference, and he seemed to have no issue with going after somebody's mom, if that's his interpretation of the word. He seemed to have no issue going after somebody's mom in that particular situation, but then when the word was used towards him, he had an issue with it because he thought it was, he interpreted it as some coming after his mom. Obviously, I think mom jokes, when they're done in seriousness with somebody who doesn't know you, they're off the table. I think they're always offensive. But nonetheless, if it's got to be consistent, then that means he didn't care to disrespect Demetrius' mom a few months ago. If that's in fact the way he feels, what he feels the word means.
Also, Caleb, he got cut under his eye a little bit, and some people are thinking maybe it was from him wearing sunglasses. Do you think that will play any effect or any factor in the fight?
I think it was more of a scratch than a cut, but yeah, maybe he had to miss a couple of weeks of sparring or something, and maybe the skin is a little delicate and might open in the fight. But I don't, listen, we're all pro fighters. Getting cut is part of fighting. It doesn't mean the be-all, end-all. If you have a good cut man, you can, I had a great cut man in my career. I got cut many times, and he handled it, Danny Milano. So I don't think even if Caleb gets cut, it's going to have that much of an effect. You're in there, you're fighting, you expect to bleed, I think.
But overall, as an analyst, though, who do you think wins this fight, Canelo or Caleb Plant?
It's hard to pick against Canelo right now. He's fighting at his best. Also, the thing I look for is Canelo is used to these type of atmospheres, these kind of monster big fight atmospheres, loud decibel levels, big moments. Canelo's used to it. There are guys that are very, very good fighters, but they step into these moments, especially for the first time, and they're kind of a little bit frozen. So you got to kind of see. I experienced it in the first couple of rounds in my fight with Miguel Cotto. I wasn't used to that kind of atmosphere, and I was a little bit stiff in the first couple of rounds, and it cost me. I felt like Billy Joe Saunders had been much slicker in his career and had been a better judge of distance in other fights than it was in the Canelo fight. It never seemed like he could get his distance in the Canelo fight. Canelo was stepping out of range very well, and in doing so, Billy Joe was coming up short consistently with the left hand, and eventually that same coming up short is what caused him to get countered with the uppercut that broke his eye socket. So, and he'd been in a tough situation. I remember he fought David Lemieux in Montreal. So I think, these kind of major impact moments, it doesn't just come down to style-wise. Style-wise, I think it's an even fight. Canelo and Canelo are good fighters. The fight is going to evolve the way it's going to evolve. But I think the intangibles of how a guy like Caleb can handle these kind of big moments, because it's a bigger moment than he's ever experienced. It doesn't matter what big fights he's been in. This is the biggest moment. Canelo has his experience. He knows it, and he's calm in them. We already know that. how is Caleb going to approach round 1, 2? And how is he going to loosen up into the fight? Because if you start out stiff and give away rounds early on, it could set you off on the wrong foot. And that's where I think a lot of this comes down to. I think it's a great fight stylistically, but I think emotionally, I'm very curious to see how Caleb starts out the fight.
But moving on to what's going to go down on the opposite side of the country next Saturday, Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. Their rematch. Last time I spoke to you, we discussed a bit about Colby and your thoughts on him, if he was deserving of that rematch. It's finally made. It's finalized going down next weekend. So who do you think wins that?
Right now, I think it's one of the bigger fights that can be made because Colby, regardless of anything, is still a polarizing figure. And he's a guy that gets people talking, he gets people reacting, and he's a good fighter. But Usman's at his best right now, so it's very hard to pick against Usman. But Colby, I feel like, he's seen him already in the octagon once. He kind of knows what he's dealing with this time around, and so that can be an advantage. It's not always an advantage, don't get me wrong. We saw Vettori and Adesanya, and Adesanya handled Vettori the second time, I thought, easier than the first time. And, that's my guy, Vettori, but and great win. Shout out to Vettori, Marvin, won his win last week. But nonetheless, that can also work against you. Usman may come out sharper and may be onto what Colby's doing. So we'll see. It's a fight worth having, though. I mean, I think it's a sellable fight. I think people will want to see it. And Usman's at his best right now. Usman is one of the top overall fighters in MMA right now, not just at that weight.
Yeah, he is also the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter right now as well. But speaking of fights, there's always so much going on in boxing. Even a few days ago, it was rumored that Mike Tyson will be fighting Logan Paul. What do you make of that? And do you think, that is going to happen?
Check that out, huh? Logan Paul within a year in the ring with both Mayweather and Mike Tyson, huh? Pretty crazy. I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it. But I think these kind of celebrity exhibitions are getting more and more popular. Logan, the Paul brothers have really made them super popular. It's funny because I feel like Jake is fighting sanctioned fights, but Logan is fighting exhibitions. I feel like Jake's having real fights. Those are on his record, Jake, Logan's doing all the exhibitions. They're not on his record. He's doing the Mayweather. He did the Mayweather one. He's doing the Tyson one. I think either way, both guys are, doing well for themselves. Mike is a little older. But I still think, that power is the last thing that leaves you. So Logan's got to be careful. But shout out to Milton who trains Logan Paul. Milton Lacroix. I don't know, Milton, my bad, man. I can't get your last name. But nonetheless, shout out to Milton. That's my guy. I know him for decades. It's funny because we were talking before with Schmo, and we were saying that I know both the trainers of the Paul brothers very well. I go back with BJ Flores a long way, and I go back with Milton a long way. So it'll be interesting because Milton is always never at a loss for words himself.
Yeah, and lastly, for all your fans, what would you like to let them know and where they can find you?
What I'm going to let them know is I'm dying of heat right now.
Me too.
We're dying of heat right now. So,
I'm melting.
But you can find me on Boxer Mouthpiece podcast, and pretty soon I'm going to be starting the Champ and the Commish Mouthpiece. Look at this. I missed.
It's the heat.
Boxer Mouthpiece podcast with Savage Dan, and then I'm going to be starting the Champ and the Commish podcast with Randy Gordon soon. Check me out on those. You'll also be seeing more of me soon with Pro Box Promotions and Blue Moon Boxing and Boxer in general. I look forward to that, and look forward to seeing all you guys as well.